Hey, hello, everybody. Yes, I know it is very late for me to be on here tonight, but I have been contemplating, thinking over, going backwards and forth about something that I know the Spirit gave to me to share. And so I just decided I would hop on for about 15, 20 minutes and just kind of tell my little old story um, about a conversation that the Spirit was having with me this week. And it was a wow moment. It was a splash water in your face kind of moment. And it was one that I must say, um, God is serious about his business. He's serious about you and I doing his business. And he's very serious about the yeses that we give him. And he's very concerned about the yeses that we give him. Very, very concerned. And we need to be just as concerned. And so my live tonight is talking about the steps, the first step, and talking about are you, um, are you going out of the order of God's steps? And so this week I've had some sinus issues. Tuesday I had to stay home because of sinus pressure up in this area in my head and all up in here issues. And on yesterday, I went into work almost at the middle of the day, but not quite. So we'll say late morning. I went in because same issue all up in here and all across here, sinus issues. And it was on yesterday that the Spirit began to really just get a hold of me because of some things that I was voicing out to the Spirit about, some things that I was feeling and wanted to change, and was just in tears about what I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of. And what the Spirit gave to me was as follows. um are you going to say yes? No, I'm sorry, that's not it. The question was, what quality of life are you wanting? Are you wanting the quality of life that I'm going to give you? Or are you wanting the other quality of life, which doesn't look so good? And I just was just crying, just in that moment began to cry. And it just kept, the Spirit just kept saying, what is the quality of life that you're wanting? Are you wanting the quality of life that I'm going to give you? Or are you wanting the other quality of life that you just do on your own and it doesn't look good for you? And I just was just crying for so long, just in that question, just going over and over in my spirit. And the Spirit began to tell me, you keep going out of steps. You keep going out of the order of steps. You keep going out of the order of steps. You keep trying to go to step number 4 or 5, and you've not completed step number 1, 2, 3, and 4. You keep trying to go down to step number 8 and 9 and 10, but you haven't even completed step number 1. You have not done step number 1. So until you do step number 1, there is nothing else that can go on in those other steps that you're trying to go out of the order of doing, and it's not working. So if you're wanting the quality of life that I want to give you, the quality of life that brings you deliverance, brings you healness, brings you wholeness, if you're wanting that quality, of life, then you can't bypass doing step number one, because you want to jump past the first step and go down here and then just, put the steps in and do them however you want to do. And it was like, no, I have steps to your quality of life that I'm wanting to give you. I have steps to the quality of life that I know that you're seeking. I have steps to the quality of life that I have already prophesied to you is yours. But you keep trying to go out of the order of the steps that I have for you. Now, whether you are willing, knowingly or unknowingly doing this, the spirit didn't get that deep into that. The basis of what the spirit was really telling me yesterday was, you are going out of the order of the steps, and so you have to make a choice. Today is the day you must make a decision. What quality of life are you wanting to have? Are you wanting the quality of life that I have to give to you, or are you wanting your own quality of life that you're trying to put together for yourself that does not end well for you? Because I already know your future. I already know if you make that step, then that quality of life is not going to work out for you in the manner that you want it to work out. But if you choose my quality of life and follow my steps, then it's going to work out way beyond anything that you could ever imagine, you could ever seek, you could ever ask for, you could ever just possibly believe. It's going to go beyond what you could fathom, beyond even the prophecies that I've given to you. It's going to go beyond that. It's going to go beyond that. If you choose the quality of life that I have for you, and that means you have to follow the steps. And so the spirit began to tell me, and you know what the first step is. I've already told you what your first step is. Your first step is you need to go to therapy. You need to have a conversation. You need to deal with some things from your past, your present. Before you can even think about your future, you must deal with your past. You must deal with issues in your present. You have some things that you need to deal with. So now the choice is yours. What quality of life are you looking to have? Is it my quality of life, or is it your own quality of life? And your quality of life compared to my quality of life, there is no comparison. But if you just really want to compare, daughter, yours doesn't look well at all for you. But if you choose my quality of life and you choose to obey the steps that I have for you, then your quality of life is going to look better and go far beyond anything that you could ever ask or hope for, perceive, or see. It's going to go way beyond all of that. Why? Because I'm in control and I have the authority. I have the final say over your life. And I can bless you in ways that are imaginable. They're just imaginable to you. So, to make it more present to all of us, are you trying to do God's order of steps in your own order? Or are you trying to do God's steps and make them your order? So God is saying step number 1 is this, but you trying to jump all the way down to step number 9 or 10. Yeah, you trying to jump all the way down to step number 9 or 10. But God is saying, I need you to start at step number 1. And if step number 1 means you got to do A, then you need to start there and do A if you want my quality of life. So if God is telling you that your first step is repentance for things you may have said or done to hurt other people, but you trying to bypass that and go down to step number 4 or 5 when God, say he gonna open up the doors of and bless you with a brand new house. And so you going on down here trying to get the brand new house, but God is telling you your first step is repentance of people you've wounded, things that you've said, actions that you've done to hurt other people, whether you knowingly or unknowingly did it. God is saying you have to do step number 1 before you can go all the way down to step number 4 and start looking for a house, because you're not going in God's order. You're not going in God's order of steps. You're trying to make his steps turn into the way you want to do them, which is any way any way you want to do it. I want to do step number 4. Why? Because I don't really want to do step number 1. I don't think I did anything wrong. I don't believe I hurt anybody. But God is just saying the quality of life and the blessings and the doors that I'm going to open up for you spiritually and naturally, I can't do that if you're going to bypass doing the first step. And the first step was you need repentance of some things that you said or done, actions or whatever. I'm just giving that as an example. Mine was, I told you need to go to therapy. You have not really completed that step at all. You've done part of it, but yet you're way down here trying to do all these other things. But you haven't finished step number 1. And number 1 for you, daughter, is you need to go to therapy. You're thinking about trying to get into the next book and write the next book. You can't. I won't allow it. Why? Because I need you to do the first step of going to therapy so that you can deal with some issues, so that when you get down to whatever step number God has for me, where I start the process of writing the next book, you're prepared. You're able to write the book. And as you go through those things, you don't revert back to those pain and to those issues, and you're not traumatized all over again. But that can only happen if you follow the first step, and your first step is you need to go to therapy. But you didn't go all the way with it. You went to a certain point and then you stopped, and then you went to another certain point and you stopped. But daughter, the quality of life that you are wanting comes with you following the steps that I lay out to you. I give you the first step. I need you to act on that first step. And as you begin to do the steps, watch me begin to do the things that I said that I was going to do for you. You're so focused on things way down that you can't focus on what is right here, the very thing that I need you to do, which is that first step of you going to counseling, going to therapy. So we have to make sure that when God is giving us steps, that we're following those steps in order. We're not trying to bypass steps. We're not trying to take step number 5 and make it step number 1, and make step number 1 step number 5. We cannot go out of God's order of the steps. Because the reason why God gives an order of the steps is because he knows that at each new step, the step before has already prepared you for the next new step. And then that step prepares you for the next new step. And that step, so on and so on. So there's preparation for the very next step. And when you're focused on completing the steps, then God is going to be focused on doing what he said he's going to do for you. And so I just wanted to share that because it was in my heart, because the Spirit was really dealing with me on that yesterday very heavily, that you're asking, you're seeking, and you're crying out, and you're saying this, but I need you to make a decision. What quality of life are you trying to have? The one that I have prepared for you? Yeah, bits and pieces of it has been given to you. Bits and pieces of it has been given to you. Bits and pieces of it has been given to you. But the full totality of it has not been given to you. Because you're trying to do your steps instead of doing my steps in my order. You're trying to take your steps and make them my steps. And even if you're not trying to do that, the other thing that you're trying to do is you are trying to take my steps and make them convenient in the step order that you want. And that's not how it works. So it was literally for me yesterday. Daughter, what quality of life are you wanting? Are you wanting the quality of life that I have for you? Or are you wanting the quality of life that you're trying to have for yourself? And it doesn't end well. And what I mean by it doesn't end well, when I keep saying that, it means that it doesn't end with the blessings that God ultimately has for me. It doesn't end with the mind blowing and the things that God truly wants to do for me, because I'm trying to make either my steps his steps, or take his steps and make them into the order that I want. And that's not what God is saying. God is saying, daughter, I've given you a step. I need you to start with that first step. And quit trying to think down the line of what the next steps are. Or maybe we, like me, sometimes I put it in my mind, okay, well, then I know God gonna do da 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 da. And God is saying, you don't know what I'm going to do. Quit trying to make the order in your mind the steps that I'm going to do. You can't make your mind perceive the order of the steps that I'm going to do for you, because I know what you're going to do at each step. And I may determine that at step number 3, you don't need to do step number 3. We finna jump on down here to step number 12. Because what you learned in step number 1 and 2 has now promoted you past all the steps between 2 and 12. But if I'm trying to do my own steps and make them his, it's not going to work. If I'm trying to figure out his steps and turn them all around and make them all this way, that's not going to work either. And so what he began to tell me, the Spirit began to tell me, was you got to make a choice right now, today. You don't get until tomorrow. You don't get to think about it. You don't get until next month. Today, right now, in this very moment, you need to tell me, what quality of life are you wanting? My quality of life, which is above anything that you could ever ask or perceive, or you want your quality of life, which is nothing compared to what my quality of life is for you. You have to make a decision. And there were some more things that I'm not going to share on here, but I will probably share with those that are closest to me. It was a real serious conversation. It was one of those moments when the spirit is saying, you got a choice to make. You at a crossroad right here, right now. There is a choice, and you must make it. You must make it, and then you must walk in the order of the steps that I give you. You cannot deviate, you cannot change it, you cannot make it something that is not. You can't do anything other than walk the steps as I give them to you. And are you going to understand them all the time? Probably not, because I've already told you, daughter, you are in a season where you must trust me beyond what you can see, beyond anything. You must be able to trust me totally, completely. You have a gift of faith that must now be activated, and it can only be activated through the steps that I have to take you through. So that means you don't get to deviate. You don't get to say, well, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to take this step and move it. You don't get to do that. As a matter of fact, you don't even get to know the steps. I give them to you as I prepare you to go forth. I give them to you when I know you're ready to walk in that step. You got a choice to make. What's your choice? And I made my choice, and I was crying and boohooing, and I told the Lord, you know what? I choose your quality of life that you have for me. I choose today, this day, your quality of life that you have for me. Because there is nothing in me trying to make a quality of life for myself. Nothing at all. Nothing compared to whatever it is that you have in store for me that I cannot see. But it was just a moment of, and I believe I shared it with the two of the three people that are closest to me, how how the spirit just really arrested me yesterday while I was at work and let me know, you got a choice to make, daughter. What quality of life is it that you're wanting? Are you wanting my quality of life, or are you wanting your quality of life, which doesn't, yeah, it doesn't work out for you. It's not good for you. And good for you means it's not going to be an easy road. It's not going to be the road that's going to have the blessings that I would put on you, the doors that I would open for you, the favor that I would do for you, the miracles that I would perform for you. Mediocre is the word I just heard. It would be a life of mediocre living. And I have not called you to live a life of mediocre living. I've given you the word of what your finances are to look like. But if you choose your quality of life, you're not going to get there. So, what quality of life, daughter, are you going to choose? My quality of life for you naturally and spiritually, spiritually and naturally, or however you want to say it, or you going to choose your own quality of life? And when I tell you in that moment, it was just on me. And where I was, I couldn't even leave out of that space. And I mean physical space. The physical space that I was in, I couldn't even leave out of there until the spirit had gotten an answer from me. Literally, I could not leave. Because it was like right there, right now, this is the moment you have to make a decision. And your decision that you make in this moment determines how I move for you. It determines what your quality life is going to look like for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long the Lord allows me to be on this earth. Right now, you got to make a choice. You have a decision to make. What is it? And as I said, I was crying and all. And I just told the Lord, I want your quality of life. It can't be mine. It's got to be yours. There are too many promises that you've promised me spiritually and naturally. And I don't want to forfeit any of them because I'm thinking I can figure this thing out for myself, that I can try my steps and they're going to work. They're not. I tried stuff when I wasn't saved and I was in the world and it didn't work. Tried some stuff since I've been saved, trying to figure it out, and it didn't work. But the Spirit let me know the reason why you're not moving and getting done the things that you're trying to get done is because you're not following the step. You're not doing the first step that I gave you. And the first step that I gave you, you need to go to therapy. That's the step that I gave you. You literally need to go to therapy. That is the step that I gave you. You must go to therapy. You must deal with your past, with your childhood past. You must deal with your teenage, young adult, and adult past. You must deal with that. Then you must deal with your present right now, because until you deal with the past and your present, you cannot get to the future that I have for you, because all of that must be taken care of. You're wondering why you can't start the next book. You can't start the next book until you deal with your past and your present. Until you deal with all that trauma back there, you can't even begin to write. Because as you delve deeper and writing this book, that's going to help people, that's going to deliver people, that's going to heal people, that's going to stop somebody that's thinking about committing suicide, that's going to help somebody that has tried to commit suicide and they're still here. But now they don't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. There's a stigma, there's a shame. You can't delve into that until you deal with your past. Because once you deal with that, as you're writing the book, you won't go back and revisit that in that way. It won't traumatize you. It won't cause you to stumble. It won't cause you to go back there and dwell in there and all that. It won't cause you that. So you got to do the first step. And your first step is counseling. And that's the only step that I've given you, is counseling. That's your first step, is counseling. And that's what you got to do. Because your quality of life that I'm going to give you, it strictly hinges on you following every step that I give you when I give it to you. And you don't get multiple steps at one time. You're going to get one step at a time so that you can focus on it. And as some of you all know, that I've graduated with my bachelor's. And, I was like, okay, Lord, I got to get back. No. Lord said, no. You need 6 months off before you even think about going back to school. You need 6 months before you can go back. And in that 6 months, there are a lot of things that you're going to have to get done before you can go back to school. There's an order of steps that he has for me. I don't know what they are in this 6 months. Nothing beyond the fact that I got to go to therapy. And I have my first session on tomorrow. Because the last thing before I was released out of the area that I was in, when the Spirit arrested me to have this conversation with me, was, you need to make a call and you need to set it up. You need to make a call and you need to set it up. And you need to get started now. So I made a call and I've set it up and I start tomorrow. So the whole point of this 30 minutes is, you got to do the first step that God gives you. You can't take and maneuver the steps around and try to get them to fit the way you want to do them, because you may not want to do that first step. You may want to bypass that first step because it's not something you really want to tackle. Or you just allow the devil to lull you to sleep on the fact that you need to do that first step. Whatever the situation may be, you got to do that first step. You can't jump down to step number 5 and you've not completed the first 4 steps, because you don't know, in your obedience in completing step number 1, God may not have you go through whatever step number 2, 3, and 4, or he may jump you all the way past 5 on to 7. So you may not do steps 2 through 6. But if you don't do the first step, how can you even get to the next step? How can God even begin to move? Because when you're focused on what God is wanting you to do, which means when you're focused on completing that first step, when you focus on completing that very first step, God is already working way down the line. He's already working because he already knows, well, this, my son and daughter gonna complete this first step, and I already know the outcome of this first step. And since I know the outcome of this first step, they may not need to do step number 2 and 3. They can go to step number 4, because step number 1 is going to take care of steps 2 and 3, so that they can just jump to step number 4. Again, while we're focused on step number 1 and doing what he's saying in step number 1, God is working behind the scenes, getting prepared your next steps to go. So I'm just saying, think about it. Are you doing the first step that God gave you, or are you taking God's steps out of order? Or are you trying to make your steps be his steps? Or are you trying to make his steps fit the way you think they should go, because you don't like step number 1? And everybody's step number 1 is different. My step number 1 is not your step number 1. Your step number 1 is not my step number 1. Everybody's step number 1 is different. Your step number 1 could be multiple things, and it's just one step. My step could have been multiple things, and it's still just one step. But whatever it is, it's our own step 1. And are we doing the first step, or are we trying to maneuver our way around God's steps and do them out of order? That's if God has even told you the order of your steps. Some of us, he may have been able to tell us a few steps because he can trust us with those. Some of us, he cannot tell us, all these many steps. He can only tell us one step at a time, because he can't trust us that we won't try to jump ahead. Or he's told us one step because I'm trying to work in you trust and faith to move beyond whatever you can see, to move even if the step seems crazy, move if the step doesn't even make any sense. I need to know that you trust me enough to continue to make that step. We plead the blood over the internet. I know you mad because I'm talking about steps, but anyway, amen, brother. That's it. That's it. One step at a time. One step at a time. And that's the other thing. Just because God gives you all the steps, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to do, I'm going to do step 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You can't do all them steps at once. You just cannot. Because then you're going to run into confusion and a mess. Yep. You're going to run into confusion and a mess if you're trying to do all the steps at once. So even if God gives you the first 4 steps, the first 5, the first 3, whatever, you still can't do all those steps at once. Or, well, I'm going to do step number 4 first because it seems like it's a little bit easier. And then I'm going to come back and do. No. You have to do them in order. So if God says step number 1 is to call up somebody that you know you was wrong in the way you talked to them or treated them, and God said you need to call them up and you need to apologize, then you need to do step number 1 and apologize. Not jump down to step number 4 where it says pray for a new car, and I'm just throwing it out there, and go pick out your new car. Pray and ask for direction. Pray and ask God where to go get your new car. Well, excuse me. How can you go to step 4 when you didn't do step 3? Step number 1. And step number 1 was you need to call and apologize to the person that you wounded. Because God does things decent and in order. So you can't bypass step 1 of apologizing to go down to step 4 and pray for God to show you where to go get your new car. Really? No. Your first step is do this. Do this. Do this. Promises come with a condition. If you do this, I'm going to do that. It obligates God to do the things that he has said. So, doing my first step of going to therapy, that's obedience. Obedience obligates God. Obedience moves God. There are a lot of things that move and obligate God if we just do them. So my first step of order that I'm supposed to do is go to counsel. I don't know anything past that of going to therapy. I know nothing else beyond that I need to go to therapy. Mind you, I got in hadn't made an appointment at all, hadn't called to make the appointment, but on yesterday, when the Spirit arrested me in a place, and I'm and wouldn't allow me to leave that physical place until I made the decision of the quality of life that I want. I was given the first step reminder, which was, daughter, your first step is you got to go to therapy. You need to schedule that appointment. You need to schedule the appointment today. You need to schedule the appointment. And that was yesterday that the Spirit said, you need to schedule the appointment. And there are a lot of other things that were told to me in the location where I was that I'm not going to share here, but it was enough. It was one of those water throwing moments, eye opening, however you want to say it. It was a come to Jesus moment for real. You got a choice to make, daughter. What quality of life are you wanting? The quality of life that I have for you? Or are you wanting your own quality of life that you yourself, Sonia Walker, trying to put together that means no good? Or do you want the quality of life that I have for you that's beyond anything that you could ever hope or ask or think? It's beyond anything in your wildest dreams. And in order for you to have that quality of life, you got to make a decision. your quality of life, or do you choose the quality of life that I have for you? Which quality of life is it that you want? And before I left out of that physical location of where I was weeping and crying, and I told the Lord, I want your quality of life for me. I don't want to forfeit a thing because I'm trying to do my own quality of life. How many of us are at that point, and you know you're at that point where you got a decision to make? Either you want God's quality of life, or you want your quality of life. And our quality of life that we try to do on our own means nothing. It doesn't last. But God's quality of life means everything. And it lasts. It lasts. Because it's God giving us that quality of life. What is the first step that God has told you to do that you've either tried to bypass, you've tried to make your steps his steps, you've tried to take the steps that he gave you and turn them into something else, you tried to guess what the steps are past the first step because he didn't give you anything but one step, you tried to guess past it and figure out what it is? What is the first step that God has given you to do that you haven't done? You need to do that first step. And you need to focus on that first step and watch God focus on the rest. Watch God begin to work behind the scenes. Simply because you've been obedient and you've focused on that first step. I'm not telling you something that God hasn't dealt with me first on. And he literally has dealt with me first on this. Literally yesterday, he has dealt with me about not doing the first step. And my first step is therapy. In February, God gave me a word of something that I needed to do. And he said, be obedient and do that thing. Do it. And if you do that, watch what I'll do. I did the very thing that he told me to do. And I've been consistent with it. Because it wasn't just do it one time. It was you have to be consistent from here on out with this thing. And watch what I'm going to consistently do for you. I did it. God released something to me that wasn't supposed to be released to me until March. God released it to me. I did what he told me to do on a Sunday. God released the thing to me on a Wednesday. And I wasn't supposed to have that released or given to me until March. Obedience of doing what God told me to do with that thing right there. Obedience of me doing what God told me to do in that thing right there. Strictly obedience. Strictly obedience in doing that very thing that God told me to do. And the benefits that I've been receiving from just that one Sunday obedience. Well, actually, I did it. I'm sorry. I actually did it on a Friday. I'm sorry. I did it on a Friday. And that following Wednesday, God released it to me. But my point is, I was obedient. And God let me know when he was telling me, the moment that you're obedient to that, to prove to you that I am who I say that I am in your life, watch what I do for you immediately. And immediately he did that. And I wasn't looking for that to be done, but he immediately did it out of my obedience. my obedience. And since that Friday, I've been consistent in the thing that he's told me I had to do. And I guess the example would be the woman who had the sons that they were coming to get her sons because she owed money. And the prophet told her to gather up all the vessels. And he told her what to do. And she followed those instructions. And the oil just kept coming. It just kept coming. It just kept coming. It just kept coming until she had no more vessels. There was nothing else left. But if she had, as my pastor preached on last Sunday, if she had more vessels, the oil was going to continue to flow because she was obedient. So because I was obedient on that Friday in February of what God told me to do, there has been a continual flow in my house. Continual. I haven't seen a continual flow like this in my house in years. It's been years since I've seen a continual flow like this in my house. But it's because I was obedient. And I did that very first step. And that very first step was just do this. You don't need to tell a bunch of people. You just tell one person and watch what I'm going to do out of your obedience to that one thing. That one thing. Again, obedience. And then what is the first step that God is giving you? Because I'm on two different things. There was an obedience and a first step that I needed to do in February, and I done that. But there was a whole different another step for another blessing, which is the long-term benefit of what God wants to do in my life. And in order for you to be able to trust me when it's time for you to retire and to leave, in order for you to trust me, now is your training. Now is your probationary period. Now is your probationary period. Now is your training ground. Your probationary period of being able to trust me when I say, you do this step and I'll take care of the rest. You do this step and watch what I do next. You do this step and then I'll give you whatever the next step is. You do this and you keep doing the steps as I give them to you. Watch the things that you are asking me to do. Watch what I do for those things, because there are specific things, daughter, that you are asking for me to do in the next 6 months. Watch what I do as you continue to do the steps. Don't deviate. Don't go this way or that way. Do the steps as I give them to you and watch what I begin to do between now and the end of the summer, the 6 months. Watch what I do. But you got to do the first step first. You got to make a choice of the quality of life that you want to live. My quality of life, which added no sorrow to it, my blessings don't, or your quality of life that you trying to do on your own without me, with me being a second thought or afterthought, or me coming in and God fix this. And God don't always fix the messes that we do. He don't always fix them right away. Sometimes we have to stay in that mess for a while to get the true understanding of, yeah, if you had did what I told you to do over here and did step number 1, then went to step number 3, instead of going way down here to step number 5, or what you thought was 5, but it really wasn't 5. It was just you doing your own thing, trying to outthink me. You can't outthink God. You can't get ahead of what God is trying to do. Because God can even give you a step 2 and decide In the middle of your step 2. Okay, that's enough. Let's go down here to step number 10 that I have. So we have to start with the first step and then be obedient and follow the steps that God gives us after that. Start with step number 1, the first step. What is the first step that God has given you to do that you haven't done? If you waiting on God to open some doors, you waiting on God to do some spiritual things, you waiting on God to do some natural things, God is waiting on you to be obedient and do the first step. That's your hindrance, is the fact that you're not doing the first step. That's your hindrance. The fact that you are not doing the first step. Your refusal to do the first step is hindering God from doing any other steps, doing any other moves, because you haven't done the first step. And so that's all I have tonight. Thank you, my brother, Pastor Demetrius, for coming in and visit and dropping in on us tonight. I appreciate it. I don't know who was on YouTube, but whoever was on YouTube, I thank you for stopping by and staying as long as you stayed. I pray that whatever has been said, that it bless you. I pray that you will remember and go back, watch it again. It'll be up in the group, it'll be up on the ministry page, it'll be up in the ministry group, it'll be up on the ministry YouTube page. It's going to stay up because I don't believe the word about the first step was just for me. I believe that there are a lot of other people that have been praying, asking, and seeking God for things, and you're wondering why nothing has happened. You're wondering why nothing has taken place. Could it be that you didn't do the first step? Could it be that God is waiting for you, I don't know, to make a choice like I had to make? What quality of life are you wanting? Are you wanting God's quality of life? Or are you wanting your own quality of life, trying to make it into God's quality of life? What is the first step that God is waiting on you to complete so that He can begin to give you other steps that lead to the doors that He has ready to open for you spiritually and naturally? So I am going to say goodnight. I am going to get in the bed or wind myself down so that I can get in the bed. And um, as I said, my first step that the Spirit let me know I had not completed, a reminder was, you need to go into therapy. You need to schedule your appointment. And as I said a while ago, I have my first therapy session on tomorrow. And I chose God's quality of life as opposed to my own quality of life that I was trying to work out and figure out and trying to do. What will you do? What is your first step? And whose quality of life do you want? God's quality of life? Or are you trying to make your own quality of life be God's quality of life for you? So I pray that you all will rest well. I pray that you all will be able to sleep Not just, rest, but sleep as well. But above all, I pray that you all will think about the first step that God is asking you to do and whether or not you've done it. And the question that God is asking you of whose quality of life do you want, his or your own? Because I know that God asks us all a question. Do we want his way, or are we wanting our way? And there's a first step for all of us. There's a first step for all of us. There is a first step for all of us. All right, good night. Those of you that are a part of the ministry, don't forget, we are still in the very beginning part of The Battlefield of the Mind book by Joyce Meyer. And tomorrow at 6 p.m., if you are a part of the ministry and have signed up for it, we're going to still be talking about the introduction. Good night, my brother. We're going to still be talking about the introduction part. So come ready. Read chapters 1 through 7 and be prepared, because we're going to dig out nuggets out of each of those chapters, and we're going to discuss the battlefield of the mind, because the mind is important. And I'm going to end with this. My mama used to tell me, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And I never understood that as a teenager. I thought it was funny and laughed about it. But as an adult, as I've gotten older, it is very true. If your mind is idle, it gives room for the enemy to come in and put in all kind of thoughts, and you wonder all over the place. We don't want that. We have to get a hold of our mind so that we can do the first steps, so that we can make the decision that we want God's quality of life and not our own. Blessings and shalom to you all.